Chairperson of the Information Regulator, I think you would have received correspondence from ourselves that says that we shall be limiting presentations to 30 minutes.
Yes, Chair, we have.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chairperson, and thank you to all the honorable members of the committee. Indeed, we are going to do exactly that. The first thing that I have to say is to tender Mr. Gwala's apology. He's not with us. He's traveling on his work commitments overseas. And we are pleased to appear before this committee for the first time in our second term. I must indicate, Chairperson, that we did not submit the 5-year strategic plan last year because our term was coming to an end and we thought it was inappropriate for us to adopt the strategic plan when our term was coming to an end. So we have now done so. We have tabled it to you. It accompanied our APPs. There are just 3 things that I want to say before I hand over to the administration, to the CEO. We have almost completed the first phase of the development of, or the establishment of the information regulator. We have filled almost all the critical posts. This second term, we will concentrate on the implementation of the mandate of the regulator. And in this regard, there are a couple of things that we need to do. We will be focusing on education and public awareness of both COPIA and PAIA, focusing particularly on rural communities and on municipalities. And the second thing, we will also be implementing our enforcement powers. We do have challenges in that regard, and the committee might assist us. The enforcement committee is established by the regulator in consultation with the Chief Justice and the Minister of Justice and Correctional Services. In fact, it's the chairperson who is appointed in consultation with the Chief Justice and the Minister. We have appointed all the members of the enforcement committee, save for the chairperson of the enforcement committee. We had taken a decision to have a retired judge who will chair the enforcement committee. We, upon consultation with the Chief Justice, and he was acting Chief Justice at that time, he came back and said he doesn't think it's a good idea to have a judge to chair the enforcement committee, that we must appoint a practitioner. We were deliberate in taking a decision to appoint a retired judge because the decisions of the enforcement committee are binding. The minister has not come back to us on his view. We have written a couple of letters. We are waiting for him to come back to us. And this is delaying our processes because there are cases that are ready to be submitted to the enforcement committee. So I wanted to put this. The second thing that we need assistance with is the listing of the regulator. In the PFMA, we have written to the minister, we have made a proposal to him, the new minister, and we are still waiting again. So those 2 issues, if the committee can assist us with unlocking the impasse there. So the last thing really on what we are doing is the international cooperation. We must also indicate that at a global scale, the information regulator is beginning to be recognized, both in the access to information space and also in the protection of personal information space. And that is also pleasing to show that, to know that at the global level, now people know that we exist. With those few words, Chairperson, I will then hand over to the CEO. Thanks a lot.
No, thank you, Chairperson. Just before you proceed, I think it will be important that we welcome you back, you and the members of the information regulator. In your last appearance before us, you were leaving. It was your last appearance before us as the information regulator. except for Miss Tilly. And we said to yourselves, bye-bye, baby. Now we are saying, welcome, baby. Would like to welcome you all and congratulate you on the appointment by the President on the recommendation of the National Assembly to be the information regulator. Over to you.
Thank you, Chairperson, on my behalf and on behalf of the members. Thank you very much.
Good morning, Honorable Chair and Honorable members. Before I run through my presentation, which will take 5 minutes, the APP presentation will be presented by different heads of divisions that we have identified. Each will get 5 minutes as well, so that we deal with the 30 minutes allocation, Chair. I just want to introduce the acting head of the Popia division, Ms. Reddy, who's amongst us. She will not be doing the presentation for Popia, but Mr. Namasisi will do that, Chair. Chair, I'm not going to go through everything in the presentation. I'll start with the impact statement, which has changed. As the Chair has said that we have linked the strategic plan to the term of office of members. So it's a 5-year strategic plan that has started this financial year, and it will end with the end of the term of members after their 5 years. So what has changed, Chair? In the impact statement, the regulator is saying that all persons are empowered to assert their right to privacy as it relates to protection of personal information and access to information. So that will be the new impact statement. Chair, out of this impact statement, we identified 8 outcome indicators and one outcome. There's just one outcome. It is still the old outcome, so I'll not go through it, but the outcome indicators are 8 in number. The first one, Chair, it is the percentage of complex complaints received, investigated, and finalized as they relate to the Protection of Personal Information Act. Chair, with regard to this, at the end of the MTSF period, which is 26-27, we target to have finalized 80% of the complex complaints that would have received and investigated and would have finalized them. Starting this year with 50%, in 2023, 60%, in 2024, 70%, and in 2025, 80%. The second outcome indicator, Honorable Chair, is percentage of simple complaints received, investigated, and resolved as they relate to the Protection of Personal Information Act. And by the end of the MTSF period, Chair, we have targeted to complete 100% every year of those that we will receive. Starting with 2022, 100%, and ending up with 100% each and every year. Is an cumulative target, Chairperson. The third one is the percentage of complex complaints received, investigated, and finalized as they relate to PAEA. And our target for the end of the MTS period, Chairperson, is 80%, starting with 50% in 2022-23, 60%, 23-24, 70%, 24-25, and 80% in 25-26. And the fourth indicator, Chair, is almost the same as the one in Popia, is that of simple complaints received, and every year will resolve 100% of those simple complaints received. Chairperson, the next indicator is indicator number 5, which is percentage of the nationally representative sample of the population who are aware of their right to privacy as it relates to the protection of personal information. So, Chair, the information regulator would like to cumulatively have sampled 25% by the end of 2026-27, starting with 5% in 22, 10% in 23-24, 15% in 24-25, and 20% in 25-26. So all in all, would have at the end of this period, 5-year, have sampled 25% of the population to check whether they are aware of their right to privacy as it relates to the protection of their personal information. Indicator number 6, Chairperson, is percentage of nationally representative sample, which will deal, is the same as number 5, but it will be looking at those members of the public who are aware of their right to access to information, and it has got the same target. The end of the MTSF target is 25%, and it will cumulatively build from 5% in 2022 to 25% in 2025. And Chairperson, the next one is our Act in Section 40 provides that we should provide education, and therefore we've got an indicator that says that a number of education programs conducted to promote protection of personal information. So these programs will undertake from 2022. We'll have 7 programs, 9 programs in 2023-24, 9 again in 2024-25, 11 in 2025-26, and at the end of the MTSF period, we'll have 11, again, Chairperson. And the same targets, Chairperson, will apply to educational programs that will be done in terms of the promotion of access to information. It will be the same targets, ending with 11 programs at the end of the MTSF period in 26-27. Chair, I'm going to end here with my 5 minutes, and I will ask Mr. Nemasisi to start with the presentation on the APP for 2022-23 and deal with 2 programs, which is Popea and Paea, in 5 minutes each. Thank you, Chairperson. Over to Mr. Nemasisi.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Honorable Chairperson, honorable members. Thank you, CEO. As the CEO has indicated, my presentation will cover 2 programs: the protection of personal information, which is Program 1, and the promotion of access to information, which is so protection of personal information, Program 1, and promotion of access to information, which is Program 2. So, Chairperson, honorable Chairperson and members, under the POPIA Program 1, we have got 9 planned annual targets, and target 1 and 2 in line with our strategic plan. It's actually, we're going to focus on the complex complaints. These are the complaints, Chairperson, that require full investigations, and those we classify them as complex complaints. We also, and the target there, it's about 50% annual target. And then in terms of the simple complaints, those are the complaints that we resolve them through your ADR process. These are the, for example, when we refer them to mediation or conciliation, we call them simple complaints. And our target on those ones, Honorable Chairperson, is to achieve 100%, because they are actually by its nature simple complaints that will normally take about 3 months. The third item is, we, as a new organization, we intend to develop a compliance monitoring enforcement framework. And this target, we intend to have this target approved in the 2nd quarter. And this is the framework that the regulator will then be able to describe its approach on how to conduct monitoring and how to enforce compliance with the protection of personal information. The 4th target is to monitor for targeted responsible party. This is a targeted based approach planning that we have about, we focus on the 4, and this is mainly because we have a lot of applications that I'll deal with that we need to, as the regulator, we need to approve those applications for now. And then that's why the targets of 4 only responsible parties that will be assessing on compliance will only focus on those in the 3rd and 4th quarter. And then if you look at target number 5, 6, and 7, these are the targets in which we are focusing on the processing which the regulators require to authorize responsible party to process their personal information or approve the application. So these applications are, for example, application for code of conduct, prior authorizations, application for exemption from POPIA, and registration of information officer and deputy information officer. In all these applications, our target is to process 100% of all applications received in this financial year. The last target under the POPIA Program 1 is the rules of procedure for the enforcement committee. In this, we target to have this rules of procedure approved in the 2nd quarter. We do have a draft, but the decision that we've taken was to separate the rules of procedure because we perform dual mandate under the PAIA and POPIA. So we decided to separate and have rules of procedure for enforcement committee per each piece of legislation that we regulate. By the 2nd quarter, it's our target to have these rules of procedure approved. If I were to jump quickly to the program 2, which is the promotion of access to information, we have got about 5 plans annual targets for this financial year. And target number 10 and 11, these are the targets that fall under the complaints and investigation subdivision. Similarly to the POPIA divisions, these are also classified as complex complaints. We also have simple complaints, and the targets are the same as the ones that I indicated under the POPIA Program 1. Item number 12, since we're regulating 2 pieces of legislation, as I indicated earlier on, we intend to also have the rules of procedure for enforcement committee. For the PAIA division, we intend to have the rules of procedure approved in the 1st quarter. And then item number 3, target number 13, we have planned to conduct a targeted, this is not a random assessment, it's targeted compliance monitoring on 96 public and private bodies in this financial year. For example, Honorable Chairperson, in the 1st quarter, our target would be to at least assess compliance with POPIA on 15 public bodies. Our focus in the 1st quarter will be focusing on, for example, on major metropolitan municipalities and the district municipality. So that's how we plan to do a targeted based monitoring on compliance. This is stretched throughout the year in terms of quarterly targets, but the 1st quarter will be doing 15, and then the 2nd quarter is 24, the 3rd is 27, and the 4th is 30. And this is a mix of different sectors in the public and private bodies. The last target under the PAIA, which is item target number 14, we intend to have an approved compliance monitoring and enforcement framework. This also is similar to POPIA. We intend to have this approved in the 2nd quarter. This is the framework, as I indicated, which will describe the regulators' compliance monitoring and enforcement approach to promote, monitor, and enforce compliance with the PAIA. Thank you so much, Honorable Chairperson and members. I'll hand over to the CEO.
Mr. Dimba will proceed with education and communication, Ms. Shube with corporate services. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you, CEO. Good morning, Chairperson, honorable members of the committee. The division I'm presenting on is the Education and Communication division. Our targets for the year cover aspects that involve the provision of education and training, the conduct of public awareness activities, the coordination of the regulators' engagement with stakeholders, and also a public opinion survey on the level of awareness of POPIA and PAIA among a sampled population. The CEO has spoken in his presentation on the strategic document. He spoke about the public opinion survey that we intend to run to test the level of awareness about PAIA and POPIA. Where I want to focus on is on items 17 and 18, which provides for the number of educational programs that will be conducted to promote the protection of personal information, as well as the promotion of access to information. We are receiving increasing demand from particularly the information holders, the responsible parties, public bodies and private bodies, on capacity building services by the regulator. And so we are now introducing the structured approach in provision of these services. We'll continue doing our work on public awareness programs, wherein we go out into various parts of the country to engage with community members in creating awareness about POPIA and PAIA and the work of the regulator. Where there is a change, Honorable Chair and members, is with regards to engagement with the stakeholders. Up until now, the approach that we have taken has been to engage with every entity that wants to interact with the regulator. However, we feel it is now time to change this approach and adopt a clustered approach wherein we engage at a sectoral level. That way, we are able to cover more ground with the limited resources that we have, and we are able to do more with the time that is available for members and the administration to engage with stakeholders. As indicated by Chairperson, we have a program that addresses our participation in international processes and activities and events. We have built this into the APP, wherein we have a targeted delivery of 8 programs on international cooperation. Chairperson and members, those are the key aspects of this part of the annual performance plan. Thank you, CEO. Over to you.
Madam Shube, if you may proceed with corporate services, including finance.
Thank you, CEO. I hope I am visible. Good morning, Chairperson, honorable members of the Portfolio Committee, members of the regulator, as well as colleagues. I'm going to present corporate services, that's Program 5B, as well as Program 5C. In corporate services, we have 6 outputs, which are as follows. The first one is that we plan to implement the human resource plan. The target for the year will be 80%, which is broken down into quarterly targets as presented on the slide. The next output, it will be the lowering of the vacancy rate. We plan to lower it to be below 10%. So on quarterly basis, we have broken down the targets. First quarter to be 25%, 20%, 15%, and as the end of the year to 10%. The third target will be the implementation of the ICT plan. Our annual target is 80%, which is broken down per quarter, wherein we plan to have 20% of the ICT plan implemented during the first quarter, second quarter 40%, 60% during the third quarter, and 80% last quarter. And the next target is the implementation of the activities in the records management plan, wherein we have 16 activities in the financial year. We have broken them down into four activities per quarter. Next slide, please. The next output indicator is the approval of the facilities management plan. We plan of implementation. The first quarter to be development and then consultation during the second and the third quarter, and approval during the last quarter. And the last output indicator under corporate services, it will be the research on technological changes which affect the protection of personal information. we want to produce one report on these technological changes affecting the protection of personal information. We will be drafting the research proposal during the first quarter, second quarter. It should be approved. We will conduct the research during the third quarter and conduct the data analysis as well. During the fourth quarter, we will present the report. Next slide, please. I will now proceed to program 5C. Under program 5C, we have two output indicators. The first output indicator is the percentage expenditure allocated on the budget that we plan to spend at least 95% as at the end of the financial year. We have broken it down into quarters as well, wherein first quarter it will be 65%, second quarter it will be 75%, 85%, third quarter and 95% during the last quarter. The last activity or output indicator under program 5C is the percentage completion of the annual procurement plan, wherein we are planning to complete it at 95% as at the end of the financial year. We have broken the activities or the outputs down into quarterly targets, wherein we plan to complete it at 80% during the first quarter, 85% during the second quarter, 90% during the third quarter, and 95% during the last quarter. Next slide, please. And CEO, should I proceed to the budget?
Yes, Madam, to the budget, and then I'll summarize and hand over to the chairperson.
You are left with 4 minutes.
Thank you. Please go to the next slide. This is the budget allocation for the current financial year. However, we're presenting it for the MTF period. I will only focus on the second column, 2022-2023 financial year. The budget that has been allocated per classification for compensation of employees is 71,875,000. For goods and services is 23,029,000. For capital assets, it's 5,705,000. So in all, the budget that has been allocated to us is 100,609,000, which is a percentage growth of 13% from the previous financial year budget. Next slide, please. The next slide, we're presenting the budget for compensation of employees and how it is allocated and expenditure so far. The total compensation of employees budget is 71,875,000, as I said. As at the end of April 2022, we had spent 4,875,000. What we project to spend for the end of, at the end of the financial year is 53,631,000. The total cost of funded vacant positions to be filled, which we're currently filling, is 8,432,000. The total projected expenditure for COE as at the end of the financial year is 66,940,000. We project to underspend with 4,934,757 as at the end of the financial year. Next slide, please. This slide, we are just presenting the list of vacancies that we are currently filling in the regulator, which amounts to the total of 8.4 million, as I had presented in the slide earlier, which are the manager in the office of the chairperson, the senior compliance and monitoring officer, senior manager data breach, senior manager complaints and investigation and COPIA, chief legal officer, executive COPIA, as well as the CFO position which is also vacant. Next slide, please. The goods and services budget and divisional allocations is as follows. We looked at our current budget for goods and services, Chairperson, which is 23,029,000. We have commitments already emanating from last year. However, they could not be funded due to financial constraints. The first one is the CTAT systems development, which cost us 8.1 million. The next one is the CTAT cloud hosting, which cost us 3.6 million. Next one is the contractual obligations for operating leases, which is 4.2 million, property payments 1 million, as well as the additional office space that we seek to procure at 1 million. What is available in the current financial year for goods and services, therefore, is 5,024,000. We have then allocated this available budget for each division as follows. For Procure division is 1.250 million, 1.2 million, yes. For PAIA is 1.250 million, Educom is 1.250 million, and under administration is only 1 million, and other miscellaneous activities that we need to fund, it will be 274,000.
Thank you very much. Your time is up. The 30 minutes is up.
Thank you, Chairperson. I'm done.
Thank you very much. Members, I will now open for questions and comments. I have Honorable Brenus Breitenbach, Honorable Swart, Honorable Horn, Honorable Velmani, vote their hands in that order. Honorable Yako, in that order.
Thank you, Honorable Chair, and good morning to everybody. Again, in the interest of time, Chair, I'll try and limit the questions. What is the progress in the current position with regards to a separation envisaged from the Department of Justice? What is the position with regard to the portal for registering information officers? Is it up and running yet? And if not, why not? What is the position with regard to an electronic system for complaints management? Is one in place and does it function? And if so, is it successful? And then there appears to be a very low influx of PAIA requests. What is the reason for this? Is there something more that should be done or could be done in order to make people aware of their rights in this regard? And what is the information regulator doing in this regard? Mr. Chair, I have many other questions, including about Transunion, but I'm sure that my colleagues will ask those questions. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Swart.
Good morning, and again, greetings from my side. Thank you for the presentation, and I'll just share with the congratulations on your appointment by Parliament, Advocate Tlakula, and your colleagues, and just continue with the good work. Can I also very briefly just ask on the leakages that we have had in the public domain of data and the Transunion? Advocate Breitenbach referred to, maybe you can fill us in on the action that has been taken in that regard. Then I would also ask about the funded vacancies. I see the targets that have been set to fill the vacancies. Will you achieve those targets? Are you on track with that? And tied to that is the projected underspending of 4.9 million. Can I get an explanation for that? And can your funds not be shifted in terms of Treasury regulations to fund more personnel or to assist, given, or shifted elsewhere, given that you're only allocating for PAIA Division 1.25 million and PAIA Division 1.250 million? One would think if you tie up with what Honorable Breitenbach said about the low influx of PIE requests, that maybe more funds should be allocated to that division or together to avoid an underspending. I'm not sure whether Treasury would allow that, but my understanding is, and I'd like to hear from you, if there is underspending, will you be able to roll it over? Will you be able to move it within your budget that is granted? That is all from my side. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Honorable Swart. Honorable Horn.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. A few matters from my side. Firstly, in respect of the listing, I think we must express our frustration that this is seemingly not progressing. While it may have been a contributing factor, may have been the fact that we now have a new Minister of Finance. From our side, Chair, I think we must say that this must be resolved, and quite possibly we must note that as a matter in which we must engage our own minister on to try and ensure that on the executive level this matter is being resolved. Then, Chair, I want to, before I deal with one or two of the risks that faces the information regulator, I want to inquire in addition to the Transunion issue, whether the information regulator is in a position to apprise us on their own investigation around the attack on the systems of the Department of Justice. Our information at the time was that the information regulator decided to embark on their own investigation. So whether any outcomes can be shared with this committee, which also have oversight over the department in that regard. And then, Chair, I want to, as a primary focus of my engagement, talk about 4 risks, the 3 of which the information regulator has identified themselves, an additional one from my side. The additional one, firstly, is around ICT infrastructure. So we as a committee see that one of the perennial issues that do hamper the effectiveness of all departments and institutions is an insufficient ICT infrastructure. So the importance, I think, given that this is a fairly new entity, is to interrogate whether in setting up the institution, the ICT infrastructure is sufficient for current needs, but also forward-looking enough to enable the information regulator not to fall foul of the ICT issues that typically plague public institutions. And in that regard, it is noted that they have an 80% implementation target. So I would want to ask whether that in fact is sufficient in order to also protect the integrity of the data the information regulator will hold. Secondly, around the risk they identified about possible inadequate enforcement, and one notes that they quite counterintuitively seemingly has learned along with the rest of the country in the media only about the Experian data breach. So I would want to ask, given the feedback today that the guidance they received is that a practitioner rather be appointed to head the enforcement committee, and knowing that the other outstanding matter around the enforcement committee has been the adoption of rules, what the current time frame is at which they are looking to properly establish the enforcement committee. Then in terms of the complaint or the manner in which the information regulator deal with complaints, I want to ask them whether they would not share the sentiment that to have a target of only 50% for the finalization of complex complaints is too low, and that might unfortunately add to creating a perception that the information regulator is not serious in dealing with these complex matters in a speedy manner. So I'm mindful of the fact that complex matters by their very nature might be difficult to finalize, but I think if the public the information regulator is serious about not falling foul of bad perceptions, then it should relook that issue. And that brings me to the last point, Chair, and that is the risk identified by the information regulator previously around ineffective education and awareness programs. And I want to ask around this, how they have settled on the 5% awareness target amongst the general population. Is that an international benchmark, or what has informed that? And then secondly, around some further detail around the intended 7 education programs. So the difficulty around this, Chair, is education programs, of course, can have a limited impact. One can have an education program where you say, we go to tertiary educations, and then you set up in a gazebo for the morning there and hand out a few leaflets, or you ultimately, through partnerships, ensure that you reach more or less all enrolled students. So I want to hear what the magnitude or the content of these intended education programs ultimately will be. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Honorable Nevot Johan.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you to the Information Regulator team for the presentation. I would also like to add my welcome, as the chairperson had said earlier, my welcome back to the team. Onto my questions. It is quite alarming to read that South Africa has the 3rd highest number of victims in cybercrime, in terms of cybercrime. And I would like to know, what is the role that the IR is going to play in terms of reducing, the number of cybercrime victims in South Africa? In relation with awareness and dissemination of information and education programs, I'm hoping that the IR will take into account people with disabilities so that they can have access to your planned awareness, training, and education programs, so that people with disabilities also receive this very vital information. I think this question was asked already, but I just want to check the ransomware attack on the department. The regulator had done its own investigation. If you could kindly provide us with an update. And then in terms of the Department of Health, the regulator expected a report back by April 2022. So has that feedback been received in terms of the use of personal information during the corona pandemic? If you could just give us an update or report on that. It's a bit complicated to read through percentages. It always makes it makes it straightforward if they are numbers. So could you stipulate how many numbers, in terms of positions filled and positions that still need to be filled? Thank you so much, Chair.
Thank you very much, Honorable Nevot Johan. Honorable Yako.
Thank you very much, Chair. I want to thank the presenter for the presentation. I think I am covered in terms of the questions, because I wanted to ask, especially the CFO position that's still yet to be filled. I wanted to understand how far we are in terms of that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Yako. Honorable Ramulube.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning to colleagues, and thank you for the presentation. Chair, colleagues have covered on many clarities or questions that I wanted to pose, but I'll take from the last one of Honorable Velma. When we did the oversight in Jan, Chair, there was an issue or an emphasis that they are current vacancies. I would also want to know whether those vacancies have been filled, especially bearing in mind this financial year. And if they are filled, how many have been filled and how many are still outstanding? And bearing in mind also, they made an indication of the office space. They had a frustrating matter regarding the office space. How are they going to jiggle that when they do fill all those vacancies, which requires to be filled? Chair, there was an issue we raised also. Honorable Horn has touched on the Transunion matter, and also regarding the matter that we need to, as a matter of agency, meet with the Minister of Justice. I'm not sure the finance, how we're going to work on that. But there was an issue also which we raised, and we sought clarity from the information regulators when we did the oversight in Jan regarding the matter of news editors taking the Department of Education to court with regards to matric results. And they did report, they did make an emphasis that how the news editors might have won the case, it was on the basis of an unlawful standing on the olden tradition standards, or they did not follow the POPIA Act, something like that. But I wanted to get clarity, Chair. How far are they with that process in enforcing the POPIA Act? Have they made breakthrough on that matter? And what is it that we're going to anticipate with matriculant, especially towards the results being gazetted? Are we going to have a similar thing that happened in Jan, or it's going to be different? So those were issues that I wanted clarity on. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Over to you, Chairperson of the Information Regulator.
I can't see myself. Let me just see which way I have to move. Yes, there we are. Chairperson, thank you very much to all the honorable members for the questions. I will respond to some of the questions, and then as we go along, I will request, I'll assign those questions to colleagues. I will deal with the issue of the separation from the Department of Justice, and I will link that with the issue of listing. Until such time that the issue of listing has been resolved, it's going to be difficult for the regulator to separate completely from the Department of Justice. As to the operational side of separation, I will then ask the CIO to talk to that. So we'll really appreciate it if the issue of the listing can be taken up with the Minister of Finance. We have put a proposal to him to say that the way we think this can be done is to just amend the PFMA and to include the information regulator under constitutional institution, because the PFMA does not define a constitutional institution. It simply says a constitutional institution is an institution that is stipulated in the schedule. So if they amend the schedule and put us there, that will solve the problem. But we still have to hear from the minister whether he is going to accept our proposal or not. On the issue of enforcement, we are contemplating.
Sorry, Chair, is that the Minister of Finance?
It's the Minister of Finance because it's his domain. It's not the Minister of Justice.
Yes.
Insofar as enforcement is concerned, as I indicated in my introductory remarks, we've appointed all the members of the Enforcement Committee, save for the chairperson of the Enforcement Committee. Our intention is that by the end of the second term, which we are starting quite soon, we should be able to refer cases. The Enforcement Committee should sit because the draft rules will be adopted quite soon. So we need also to push. And I think why we had also decided on the retired judge is that if we had appointed a retired judge, we wouldn't have to compensate him or her, because as a retired judge, as you know, they receive compensation until as part of their pension until the end of their lives. So if we are going to be appointing a practitioner, it has to be a very senior practitioner. It has to be probably a senior counsel, and the rates will just be unaffordable. So there is a problem there. We still, if we can still try to convince the Chief Justice to allow us to appoint or even if the minister assists us to allow us to appoint a retired judge. And we had found that retired judge, and the retired judge had agreed to sit on the Enforcement Committee, but the Chief Justice refused.
But Chair, on that issue, I think we should be thinking about Plan B, because it's quite possible that we might reach a stalemate, or we might reach a stalemate. Because even retired judges or judges discharged from active duty, the experience we have is that quite a number of them would still want some form of remuneration, although they do get their pension in the form of salary until they die. For any additional work, quite a number of them still want additional money, even when they are appointed to commissions, to chair commissions of inquiry. There are those that do not. For instance, we know that Judge Musaneke, when he chaired the Sidimeni, the one in Gauteng, he did not want to take the money. But I think the issue is that if the Chief Justice strongly feels that a retired judge should not serve, even if we can have 10 retired judges that would want to, but it's a serious, it will still be a serious issue if he's not convinced. So the issue is, what would we do to ensure that we reach, in fact, we pass through that impasse?
Yes, Chair. What we thought we should be done is that, because the consultation in law is with the Chief Justice and with the Minister. The Chief Justice has pronounced himself, the Minister has not. It's important to hear the view of the Minister. Once the Minister has pronounced himself, then our plan B is to get a practitioner. And we have already said if it's, we will then have an open process, maybe approach the Bar Council or approach the Legal Practitioners Council to identify people who might be interested, and then we'll then have some sort of conversation with them, not necessarily an interview, but just a conversation on what this is all about. So that's our plan B, really. But we are waiting for the Minister to respond to us. And then the last one on my side, in fact, those are the ones that I'm going to be dealing with. I think the portal, all the issues relating to ICT, CEO, can I request Ms. Ramusangwana to update on portal for registration? Or maybe you can allocate, maybe let me do that, because you know better than me, CEO, who is competent to deal with those questions. CEO, let me hand over to you.
Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you, Honorable Chairperson. Yes, Chairperson, I agree that all the IT matters must be dealt with by the CIO. I will deal with a few that were raised by members. Maybe after I've done that, CIO will deal with those that relate to IT. There are matters that relate to the content, to the core. I'll request Mr. Namasisi to respond to them. Quite a number of them. There are matters that relate to corporate services. Ms. Shube will briefly deal with them, Chair, in that order. If I may, Chair, just to deal with one or two matters, two matters actually. On separation as it relates to Chairperson, as it relates to administrative work, we have identified 3 areas. We wanted to separate from the finance, part of the Department of Justice. To this end, Chairperson, we've been given access to the BES, to PESAL, so we can appoint, we can pay, we can create structure on those systems. So to that end, we've separated in a way, although the system still, lies in justice. On the IT side, Chair, we have our own website. We have, and the CIO will tackle those things. We have separated on a lot of areas of IT. We are just awaiting that SITA must come on board in terms of accommodating us within that space. On the HR part, Chair, we have also separated. We are doing all our appointments. We are approving them here. We no longer have to travel to Pretoria just to do an appointment. So on the operational side, we have almost, if I may, Chair, a thumbs up of 80% separated. But then we still have to, all these things are accounted for in the Department of Justice, well, like at the regional office. So we're not accounting for any of those. That's the first thing, Chair, that I wanted to respond to. On the issue of underspending, Chair, I would like to say, Chair, it is projected, meaning, Chair, that during the year, there might be situations where people resign, others coming. So given the 10% vacancy rate that we've targeted, we've also projected that it may result in that 4 million of underspending. So it's an issue that we are managing, but it's an issue that we've dealt with. I'm going to hand over to the CIO to deal with all the IT matters specifically that were raised, and then followed by Mr. Namasisi, Mr. Dimba. There were issues of awareness and education programs, and then lastly, it will be the CFO.
Good morning, Honorable Chairperson and members. Thank you, CEO. I will touch on the separation in terms of ICT. CEO touched on it a little bit. We have a few systems that are already in place and they are being managed by the information regulator. For example, we have our own emails, our own websites. We're also working with SITA in terms of hosting the registration portal as well as the complaints management system. With regards to human resources, we have appointed a few ICT staff that provide ICT support to the regulator. We have implemented ICT infrastructure in the office to allow connectivity. We also have an IT analysis manager who deals with IT analysis and security services. As you all mentioned, we are working with SITA so that we are moved to the government network, and SITA then will be our operator. With regards to the registration portal, the development of the portal has been completed. We have tested and quality checked the registration portal for a very long time. We are now on the final stages of working with SITA. SITA will be hosting the registration portal for us. So we are working on that now in order for us then to deploy the registration portal. With regards to the complaints management system, we had envisioned that we would start with this project last financial year. What we did then last financial year is we appointed SITA to be the developer and the hosting service provider for the complaints management system. In the beginning of this financial year, we issued a PO to SITA as we could not do it in the last financial year due to budget constraints. This is the portal that will then cost us about 8 million, but we are working with SITA on this aspect. With regards to the 80% achievement of ICT initiatives, more especially with regards to security, one of our key priorities for this financial year is to ensure that we put in some security controls so that we are protected, our information is safeguarded. We're already working on this. We've already procured firewalls. We are busy with ICT security policies and procedures. We are looking at procuring this financial year more tools that will assist us in terms of security control. As I said, it is also our priority. I think I have covered all the questions. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Honorable Chairperson. I will deal with the questions. What first question was raised by Honorable Swart regarding the Transunion security compromise that they have reported to us. We have taken an own initiative compliance assessment on the security measures which Transunion as a responsible party was required to put to protect the personal information. We have already indicated to them that we are conducting own initiative assessment. Our ICT, the CIO is leading that assessment of the Transunion system. We are hoping that by end of May, we should be able to finalize our assessment of whether they have complied with the provision of POPIA, and specifically condition 7 that deals with an obligation of all responsible parties to ensure that they've got appropriate security measures to protect their personal information. And I think we must highlight on this one, Honorable Chairperson, that the credit bureau industry is one of the sector in which we are monitoring very closely as the regulator, because they collect majority of our South Africans' personal information. And so we are monitoring this. This is a serious matter that we are attending to. And by May, we should be able to finalize the assessment. There was another question regarding from Honorable Hon. This is about the appraise on the investigation about the Department of Justice security compromise. We have engaged the Department of Justice on our own initiative as well because of security compromise. The angle that were taken earlier on, Honorable Chairperson, was to engage with them without using our enforcement mechanism. That seems to be failing. We're not getting any cooperation. We've decided as an information regulator that we're now going to invoke our enforcement mechanism so that we can be given access to the system and all the documents that will require for us to finalize our enforcement mechanism. So that's the angle that we have now taken, that decision that we should use our enforcement mechanism so that we can get all the information required to finalize the assessment, because that assessment has comments, but we were getting frustration in finalizing that due to lack of cooperation from the Department of Justice. The last one that I would like to deal with is the question from Honorable Ramlombeng, and this is regarding the matric results. This is one of the matters that we did brief the portfolio committee during their visit at our office as well, that the regulator did take a position on this, and this position was communicated the Department of Justice regarding how we feel that the publication of metric, the practice that has been happening, Honorable Chairperson, it happened before the promulgation of POPIA, and it can't be that that practice should continue without respecting the current legislation that Parliament has approved. We have communicated our position to the department. Unfortunately, during that time, because it was urgent application, we could not have entered the fray in terms of the court, but we are going to engage the Department of Education in terms of them ensuring that all the processing of personal information, especially those who are doing metric, should be in line with all 8 conditions for lawful processing of personal information. So we are hoping that by the next, before the publication of the next results, the Department of Education should be in compliance with those 8 conditions. Those are the 3 questions that I'll attend. I'll hand over to the CEO. Thank you.
Sorry, CEO, can I come in while Mr. Nemesis, apologies for just getting in. Mr. Namasisi, can you deal with the Department of Health? The report, they were supposed to have come back to us in April on the letter that we wrote to them. It's a question that was asked by Honorable, I think, Nivold, and then there was another question by Honorable Breitenbach regarding the low requests, payer requests. You did not deal with that. Can you deal with that, please? And also deal with how we have decided to deal with data breaches systematically, including the establishment of the bridge unit.
Thank you so much, Chairperson. I think with regard to the response from the Department of Health, we have not received the response from the Department of Health, but I think the CEO yesterday we had a meeting, will be making a follow-up with the Department of Health for them to respond to our letters that were returned to them regarding the personal information that has been collected during the COVID-19 pandemic, during the state of disaster, because they have collected a lot of personal information, particularly those who have done the test for COVID and they tested positive as well. So they do have the database. The regulations that were there prescribed what needs to happen, and we have taken a decision as the regulator that we will monitor to ensure that those information that they've collected are actually managed in accordance with the provision of POPIA. There was a question about the low complaints under the PIA that we receive. And I think Mr. Dimba will deal with that in terms of the awareness. Chairperson, what we did as the regulator, we focused mostly on POPIA in terms of public education and awareness. That is, in terms of the new financial year, you see in our plan, we've now going to focus much more on PIA. And that awareness, I think, is going to assist a lot of people to be able to understand that the regulator is here now, and we provide those services for free. They can then start lodging the complaints. What I can also report, Chair, is that we have seen also increase of complaints against private bodies in terms of access to information, which is very encouraging. That in the past, we always thought access to information is being requested to the public bodies, but we've seen an increase of requests, complaints that we receive. It's much more of access to information of private bodies, which are the matters that normally we'll finalize, and some of them will go to the enforcement committee. I think, Chair, I think I missed the one question that you said I should address again.
Maybe we can ask Advocate Weapon to deal with it, data breaches, how we have, yeah, Advocate Weapon, can you come in, please?
Good afternoon, Honorable Chair, and good afternoon to the Honorable members. Good afternoon to the Chairperson and colleagues from the regulator. Thank you, Chair. Chair, what we've done was to look at the data breach from Transunion. We've also analyzed the 2020 data breach from Experian. We've also received subsequent correspondence from Experian. Experian explained that there might be a linkage between the two data breaches. And what we've then done was to look at both. We are in the process of writing a report, which we are going to present to the WOCs for further investigation, because we've got a standing arrangement with the WOCs. The second thing that we are doing is to establish a data breach unit within the organization, and the data breach unit will then be responsible for analyzing and processing data breaches or security compromises. And very importantly, we are in the process of developing our processes. Very important. It is the framework and the strategy, and those two documents will then assist us in our approach. And we've also done some initial benchmarking with Ireland and Canada with regards to how data breaches managed, from simple data breaches to complex. And we are also in the process of developing our model. And lastly, with regards to the data breaches, it's just some of the skills will be sourced through a type of a panel approach, and the other type of skills will reside internally. We have acquired one very competent person, Mr. Mazibu, and he's currently assisting with analyzing data breaches and also engaging and interacting with Transunion, and also assisting where possible and necessary with the investigation in the Transunion space. And we have started analyzing the information that we've received from Transunion. And we are also requesting more information from Transunion. As soon as all the information is received, the regulator will then make sure that the report is compiled and presented to members for consideration and approval. Thank you, Chair. I'll stop there.
I don't know if you want to also talk about the linkages between the protection of personal information and the cyber crime legislation, just briefly.
Yes, thank you so much, Chair. Section 2 to Section 10 in the Cyber Crimes Act mirrors Section 19 of the Protection of Personal Information as far as unauthorized access and data breaches are concerned. What we are in the process of doing is to engage with the council that will be established through the Cyber Crimes Act, and then come up with a proposal of how interaction and engagements will be pursued. What we're also doing is to then also continue strengthening our engagements with the works, because that's our point of entry with regards to the criminal investigations, and very importantly, with regards to the educational aspect thereof. There was some material that we've analyzed from other jurisdictions, the ICO's office in the UK, and that material then points to us trying to look at what our environment dictates and how we could then roll out this approach by, as Mr. Matimba stated, a sector approach, and that would then include us going sector by sector and trying to do those type of awareness. But very importantly, the public awareness is also on the radar, where we'll educate communities about the safekeeping. We have a standard arrangement with SASA, and we are also going to engage, as we've done in the past, the Black Sash as part of the NGO sector approach, so that we then have a more wider approach to community engagements with regards to how personal information should be protected to avoid access thereto. And we've also learned through the Experience data breach and the Transunion data breach that we should be doing and conducting regular cybercrime awareness. And we are also in the process of looking at the cyber crimes, the National Cybersecurity Advisory Council in the Department of Communication and Digital Technologies to agree on an approach and to develop the material. Chair, I'm going to stop there. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Right, you CEO.
Chair, Ms. Shibe will respond to the corporate services questions that were raised by honorable members around vacancy rate, the appointment of the CFO, and so on, as well as the finance questions that were raised. Madam Shibe.
Thank you, CEO. I will start with the questions on human resources management. Currently, we have 86 filled positions. We have 7 vacancies. Our vacancy rate stands at 7.5%. Our target was to have a vacancy rate that is below 10% in the previous financial year, and we have achieved that target. But also, let me also hasten to indicate to the members that in the previous financial year, we were given funding to fill positions to establish the administration of the regulator, wherein we were able to fund the 43 positions with the funds that was allocated to us. All these 43 positions are filled as at to date. We then identified 12 positions for phase 4. And these phase 4 positions are currently filled. 6 of them were filled with effect from 1st of January, because we had realized the savings from the previous financial year budget. So we were able to fill them earlier. 6 of them were advertised in January. They are filled at the 1st of April, because they are only funded with effect from 1st April 2022. So 12 of those positions are currently filled. The 7 vacancies that we have, 5 of them are as a result of resignations, which happened between the month of March and April in the current financial year. One was a promotion, which happened with effect from 1 May. And the last one is the one on the senior manager for data breach, wherein we are currently busy with organizational design processes so that we're able to fill this position. The position of CFO, as we are speaking today, the candidates are writing their competency assessments. Interviews were conducted. So they are currently writing their competency assessments. We plan to issue offer letters by next week. If all goes well, by July, 1st of July, given that they may want to serve notice in June, whoever will be appointed, the 1st of July, we should be having the CFO appointed in the regulator. But in addition to that, we also appointed 9 interns. We had 10 of them. One was offered a position somewhere else. So we are left with 9 interns in the regulator who are assisting. So yes, the target of 10% vacancy rate, we will continue to achieve it, members. Regarding the funding and the projected underspending for compensation of employees, what we did, we have already requested for a rollover from the Treasury. We will see during budget adjustments whether they are able to give us any funding. However, we will note that they may not be really able to shift as at now within classifications. We'll have to wait until the budget adjustments to see whether they are able to shift between classifications so that they give us more funding for our groups and services. But the projected underspending may really decrease, looking at the fact that these positions will be filled as soon as it is possible, mainly by July. Most of them will have been filled. Thank you, members.
Chairperson, I'll hand to Mr. Jimba to deal with all matters that were raised around education, public awareness, and some of the low targets.
Okay, before we do that, CEO, maybe with the permission of the chair, I'm looking at questions regarding the target for complex complaints, that the target is too low for both POPIA and for POPIA in particular. And maybe for POPIA, I can venture and say that why we put the target at that, Chairperson and honorable members, is that POPIA has a lot of processes, a lot of work that they have to deal with on the daily basis and with large volumes. I mean, applications for prior authorizations, for instance, they come in their hundreds. We have processed more than 400. And there are also applications for codes of conduct, applications for exemptions, for processing personal information of children, for processing personal information. Those are, it's voluminous work. So taking that work into consideration and also taking into consideration the capacity that we have, that is why we have put the target of complex complaints at the figure that we have put. As far as PAIA is concerned, I don't know, Mr. Namasisi, do you want to say anything on that?
Thank you, Chair. Indeed, it was also similar to the reasons provided under the POPIA. It's much more of capacity constraints because we are still having a low number of staff that would be able to handle bulk of complaints. And also it was much more of, we didn't know how many complaints we may receive, and we are trying to avoid over stretching the capacity that we have. But now that the first time we received complaints was in September, in the new financial year, we'll be able to have at least the dashboard on what what we should expect in terms of complaints, and that's what we'll be able to plan properly. But as it is now, we could only estimate that depending on the number of complaints that we receive, we might be able to do 50% only. But I think in the new financial year, it will be much easier to plan because we would have known the number of complaints that we receive. Because we anticipated high number of complaints, and we look at capacity, we thought we may not be able to attend to all those complaints. Thank you, Chair.
Mr. Dimba can proceed, CEO.
Thank you, Chair. I will respond to the question from Honorable Horn regarding the 5% target on awareness. It is correct, Honorable Horn. The figure is based on historical work that had been done before the regulator was established. This is the work that had been done by civil society organizations that have been working in this area for a while, but also some Mackinac surveys, which showed that generally South Africans are aware of the idea of the right to know. Basically, people would say, of course, I have a right to know what government is doing. But when they were asked about the legal instruments that enable them to exercise the right to know, it was found largely that people were not aware of the right itself in the Constitution, Section 32, but also the enabling legislation being a PAIA. And we expect that it would be the same with POPIA and PAIA currently. I think if I recall correctly, at the highest, we would have about 15% of respondents indicating awareness of Section 32 and PAIA. So this target is informed by that historical work, but we want to be able to push that level of awareness in accordance with what we have in the strategic plan to something around 25% at the end of the 5-year period. With regards to the content of educational programs, we intend to be structured in how educational programs are delivered on PAIA and POPIA. And to this extent, we have engaged with institutions that we believe would be advantageous if we were to partner up with, for example, the Justice College, Universities South Africa, and SALGA in terms of local government capacity building. What we want to do here is to be able to put in place sustainable programs, not ad hoc training or education that tends to happen, but something that could be standardized, something that could live beyond the plans of each of the institutions that are involved in this effort. So that work is ongoing. Ideally, it will lead to a place where we are able to provide accredited training programs, but that's a long-term vision. For now, we will offer non-accredited training while we put in place systems to be able to offer accredited training in terms of the SAQA and NQF system. The last question was from Honorable Nieuwert Drugen on the issue of educational programs catering for people with disabilities. The regulator has taken a organizational position in the policy that whatever public awareness programs we run, our webinars, our seminars, etc., we always ensure that we have sign language interpretation. We have a standing arrangement with a provider called Ulimi Izandla, who are always present in our events and in our activities. And we also make sure to produce all our materials in Braille. So we would find a POPIA training manual, which is available in Braille. There are other public awareness materials that we have produced in Braille. So we are quite intentional in how we make sure that we reach out to all parts of our communities. And these are some of the ways that we achieve that. Those were the 3 points on the issue of education and public awareness, CEO, that I wanted to address. Thank you.
Mr. Demba. Mr. Timber,
Yes, Chair.
have you looked at the risk of offering unaccredited training courses? Because generally the perception amongst our people is to equate the offering of unaccredited qualifications to thuggery, because quite a number of people have taken advantage of our people. So have you looked at the risk to the reputation of the institution?
Thank you, Chairperson. Yes, that is why our plan is to be in a position where we are able to offer accredited training. The process of being able to offer accredited training is quite a lengthy and involved process. There's a number of things that the SAQA would want to see, that we would need to produce as the regulator before we were able to be given the right to provide accredited training. So there's a plan that we've put in place that will lead us to a point where we are able to offer accredited training. It's a 12-month plan, but we felt that given the demand that we have currently, particularly from public institutions that want training, we felt that we need to be able to respond to some extent to that request while we have this formal process of accreditation unfolding.
Have you communicated to those institutions or anyone who will be receiving your training that it is not accredited?
Absolutely, Chair, absolutely. We make it clear.
What is the response from them?
At this point, Chairperson, what people are looking for, at least the institutions that we engage with, they are looking for their people to be able to comply, particularly with the PAIA to some extent. And so they take comfort in the fact that the training is provided by the information regulator. And they believe by so doing, it would be credible training. It may not be accredited, but it would be credible because it comes from the information regulator. And so it seems to provide that comfort that we are the ones doing training, as opposed to quite a number of entities outside who are running training particularly on PAIA, which we are not really comfortable with. So we wouldn't, if we receive a request for training, we wouldn't say to a requester, go and approach this service provider or this company. We would rather keep it in-house. That way we are sure of the quality and we are sure of the content that will be provided.
Thank you.
Chairperson, there is one question, CEO on office space, that's from Honorable Ramulubeng, that has not been responded to. I guess you will respond to that. That's the only question outstanding, Chairperson. We've responded to everything.
Thank you, Chair. I'll request Madam Shibe just to respond on that, Chair, and how we're dealing with office space vis-a-vis the appointment of staff. Thank you. Madam Shibe.
Thank you, CEO. As I had presented earlier on, that we are looking at getting an additional office space. We are currently having discussions with the landlord to see if we cannot get an additional office space. So what they had promised us, we still have to explore that, was that they are looking at providing us an additional office space using the current contract at no cost. So we still have to explore that. But what we are doing now, we are using a hot desk model wherein everyone can have access to any office in the organization. So we are able to work. If you come in, you find space available, you utilize that space to do the work. We don't report to work on daily basis. At a minimum, all employees should be in the office 3 days per week to allow space for social distancing so that there's no, we also deal with managing of COVID. So that's how we are dealing currently with the issue of this space. So those that can work from home are given that opportunity to work from home. However, they should be in the office at least 3 times in a week. Thank you.
But you remember that when we were there, you did raise the issue of the office space. And we even said to you, you should seriously explore the issue of this hot desk. To what an extent would it be part of your permanent strategy going forward? Because we should be using the resources we have sparingly. Because what was quite clear is that your offices were properly demarcated, but there were those people who just wanted to have offices as an issue of make me feel good.
Thanks, Chairperson. Yes, you are correct. Our offices are properly demarcated, but as the staff complement is increasing, there is seriously a shortage where you find that even those that are in open plan, they are so grouped together in one small space. So it will not be a significant extension that they will provide to us, and it will be at no cost. But yes, we are exploring that the hot desk model is going to be our strategy for now, because we don't really have funding to get office space for each and every employee in the organization. As you may have seen, that floor is just completely open plan. So anyone who comes to the organization, any employee who comes to the organization is able to report for duty and have a space to work on.
Thank you very much. Chair, you said that was the last question or the last response?
Yes, Chair, we have responded to all the questions.
No, thank you very much. Thank you very much for the engagement. I think the issues that we would like a speedy resolution of, firstly, is the issue of the chair of the enforcement committee. I think it's quite important that we will engage also the ministers to make his decision and to respond to what you have written to him on, so that you can be able to explore all your options, because it's important that this committee starts working, including approaching some of the senior counsels and some of the senior attorneys who would be prepared to work pro bono. This issue of the ransomware attacks, it's a matter that is also of concern to us as the committee. We are quite shocked that you are not receiving the necessary cooperation from the Department of Justice. We will follow that up with the Department of Justice, because we think that it's important that they should be the first one. They should lead by example in ensuring that they cooperate with the institutions that have been created through an act of parliament. So we will follow it up with the Department of Justice. Also the issue of the listing of the organization, we think that it's long overdue. You have raised it on a number of occasions. We will engage with our minister to ensure that he raises this matter quite sharply with his counterpart in the finance department, but we will also raise it as part of our budget debate, to ensure that this matter is responded to. If we do not find the necessary cooperation or responses, then we will take it further from there. But we'd like to thank you very much for the briefing that you have given us. We will still go through the briefing and also look at other issues that we might need to take them up on your behalf that we might not have heard them properly. But we would come back and revert back to you as soon as it is practically possible. And also the issue of the separation. And it's also important that by the time we meet next time, we should be giving you a feedback as to the interventions that we would have made to ensure that what is remaining of the separation is done. But we do understand that the listing also would have an impact on your 100% separation. So it should be something that would be one of the first actions on our radar, that it should be solved as soon as possible. We're in constant contact with the Deputy Minister of the Department of Justice and Correctional Services, Honorable John Jeffrey, who has assured us that the department and led by him, the process led by him, is in contact with yourself with respect to the issues that were raised during the last engagement we had with you, with respect to your conditions of service and other issues relating to your employment contract. He has informed me that the discussions are quite advanced. You have raised additional issues that we would want the minister to look at. So they are looking at those issues, including the proper benchmarking as to which of the institutions. I mean, we are aware that you have used, for instance, the issue of the what is this thing? The one that is responsible for our elections as the benchmark from which you want to be benchmarked against. So that work is continuing, and I am receiving the briefings continuously. So we do take up matters that we have raised with the committee very seriously, and we want to ensure that by the time we finish our term, all these issues should be resolved. Thank you very much, Chair, and to your team, commissioners, in fact, members of the regulator and the support staff. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chairperson. I just forgot one thing to tender the apology of Advocate Strom. She is representing the regulator at the meeting of the African Network of Data Protection Authorities. The meeting is being held in Morocco. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Yes, in fact, wanted to be benchmarked with the IEC. Yes, that is it. Yes, no, thank you very much. We will make those follow-ups and come back to you with progress reports. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair, and goodbye to everyone. Thank you.
Thank you very much.